No obligation consultation. Call 702-919-0000. That's 702-919-0000. Results may vary.
EnglishGardenFlorist.com. The opinions of the hosts on KDWN are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media.
Hey, good evening and welcome to Fired Up. This is your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store on East Tropicana here in Las Vegas on KDWN News Talk Radio 720 AM. As regular viewers know, we are discussing gun issues, gun laws, self-defense issues, and politics related to the gun issues. Always we have on the show an attorney to discuss the technical aspects of the legalese and what's involved with various cases we're going to talk about. And tonight it is my honor to have once again as my guest, murder defense specialist, Clark Patrick. Welcome to the show, Clark.
Thanks for having me back again, Bob.
Glad to have you here again. Clark has been with us numerous times. Can you give a little bit of your background for anybody new to this?
Sure. Grew up in Montana, been hunting and around firearms my whole life. Did a stint in the Army, played with their guns for a while. Retired from that, got out, became a defense attorney, and for the last 10 years I've been practicing solely in defending murder cases.
Got to be interesting.
Usually is.
Very serious cases. They don't get more serious than that. The loser is in serious trouble. We are going to, as is our normal course, if you haven't tuned in before, I usually go through a few cases that happened in the last week to 10 days involving use of force or use of deadly force. Some of them are righteous shootings, good shootings. Some are questionable shootings. But we use the particular cases because there's something in it that people need to know what went right, what went wrong, and how the authorities view the cases and so on. There's little point in listing just good shootings that took place because you won't learn anything. You learn more from the bad shootings where somebody gets in trouble over a shooting. Because the media doesn't cover these, you have to understand that approximately 200 times a day in the United States, somebody uses a firearm by showing it as a threat, alluding to it, or actually firing it in self-defense, 200 times a day. So lots of cases are taking place all the time that force is used or gunfire force is used. And we're picking out 3 or 4 that took place just recently. This particular report comes to us. It's kind of a follow-up from a website called bearingarms.com. They had a report this week, the 22nd actually, that starts off, let me read you their version of what's going on here. Less than 2 months ago, they reported an Uber driver in Chicago was hailed as a hero because he used his licensed concealed carry firearm to shoot somebody who was apparently he just saw on the street that pulled a gun and started firing into a crowd of people. This was a couple of months ago now, and the guy's a big hero in doing this and stepping in where he saw somebody clearly was just random shooter was just murdering people for no apparent reason or trying to murder people. As of June 10th now, Uber has made a change in its policies that it requires drivers to abide by all federal, state, and local laws, which they always have done. And it seems now they have decided that there's too much liability if their drivers are armed. So they have come up with a directive that says Uber vehicles, not cabs, I was going to say, but Uber, rent-a-car, rent-a-driver things, are to be mobile gun-free zones. They have decided that their drivers should be victims, and hence their passengers should be victims. They have a policy now that says neither the drivers or the passengers in their system may be carrying guns. We have that's going to apply here in Nevada, in our home state where we're broadcasting from. We have that same rule for taxi cabs here. Drivers are not allowed to be armed. They are shot, robbed constantly. Now Uber will join them. So when you want to rob somebody, you simply call Uber and they will send over an unarmed driver and you can rob him. That's probably a little crass on my part, but
well, it's the same. The only difference I think is the cab. In the cabs, you can, if you're a concealed carry permit holder in Nevada, you can carry your weapon in the cab.
Yes.
So we should have probably known this a couple months ago when the legislature was in session. What may have been a big difference, because now I'm certainly not going to be able to ever call Uber, and I think a lot of the people in Nevada will not be using their service, because it's one thing to say the driver can be a victim, but it's something completely different to say not only is the driver a victim, but now I have to be a victim as well.
And how are they going to enforce that? They're going to search their
pat
passengers. That's just absolutely silly. I've worked with a lot of cab drivers who have been involved in robberies. We've had cab drivers here had gasoline thrown on them, and a number of cases where they simply called a cab, and when the guy got to the location, they robbed him, and they've been shot at, and several have been killed.
Well, it's easy. We've talked about this as far as houses. They go for the soft targets, and they know that the cab drivers aren't armed, so it makes them a soft target because they're going to have at least some cash with them.
Sure. Anyway, the Uber guys won't be armed, and apparently their passengers won't be armed, and we all know the cab drivers aren't armed, so that should reduce the number of liquor store robberies anyway, because you don't have to go to the liquor store to rob it. You can just call somebody and they'll bring the victim over to where you are. This is good thinking on the part of our policymakers, apparently. Continuing to talk for a little bit about armed employees, this story I just had to do. This was a Domino's pizza driver that shot a robber in Hollywood, Florida this week. It was reported by several news media, and I picked this one out particularly because when you read newspapers or you read online reports of shootings, I always try to find 2 or 3 sources for every case that I use, because we found some that are just clearly fakes, that it was reported by some obscure media and it was picked up by a slightly larger media, and each succeeding media that's bigger picks up the other guy's story and nobody checks the details of the story. This particular one, I'm going to read you 3 one-paragraph reports on this crime, and you will think I'm talking about 3 different crimes. This is from WPLG TV, Channel 10 in Hollywood, Florida. It says, a Domino's pizza driver shot and killed a robber. The shooting happened just before 1 a.m. Wednesday at a shopping center off Hollywood Boulevard and North 58th Street. Police said 2 men wearing ski masks entered the Domino's, where they were shot by a 24-year-old driver. One of the would-be robbers, also age 24, died at the scene. Police are searching for the second robber. He's described as wearing dark clothing and had his face covered. He is possibly armed. Now you can picture that event in your mind. The driver's in the restaurant. These guys come in, he shoots, and so on and so on. CBS in Miami reported a slightly different version, saying the shooting happened outside the Domino's. The driver had just returned from a delivery when 2 masked men ambushed him in the parking lot and tried to rob him. The driver reportedly pulled a gun and fatally shot one of them. Witnesses told CBS Miami at least 6 shots were fired. It's not clear if the masked men also fired. A local man told both these outlets that his girlfriend's daughter was working inside the pizzeria at the time and commends the driver for his quick action. Glad he was armed, the man said. I'm glad he was able to protect them. If not, it could have been a lot worse. And we have a fairly slightly different version, basically the same thing. The driver was outside instead of inside. Now the Daily Mail report, this is out of Britain, picked up the story. They added that a spokesman for Domino's released a statement but declined to comment on the case specifics, citing the ongoing investigation. He expressed gratitude that the driver was not hurt, and he hoped the police would find the second suspect quickly. He added that all national pizza delivery companies have a no weapons policy at their company-owned stores, and the store will remain closed until further notice. So the question is, does the Domino driver, who's a hero, lose his job? Or should he lose his job?
Well, he absolutely should not lose his job. But we've seen it before with some of the other national chains that have this same policy and
Yes.
want their employees to be victims. And when you're working at 1 a.m. in a store or convenience store or a pizza store, there's cash, there's money, there's usually not a lot of civilians around. There's usually maybe 1 or 2 employees around. A couple masked men with firearms can easily cause a lot of havoc.
And the drivers are robbed all the time. I mean, I could sit here and do 3 entire shows on just pizza delivery guys getting robbed, shot, beaten, raped. It's a common thing, and the Domino spokesman is correct. I understand no pizza chains let their drivers be armed. So if you don't want to call a cab to rob,
Call
you're
Domino's.
going to call a pizza place, and not only do you get the guy's money, you get a pizza.
Right.
So disregard what I said about calling Uber. You want to call a pizza delivery guy, order the pizza you want. Unfortunately, with these pizza guys, what happens very often is they're making a delivery to a house that is vacant.
Right.
And the guy is standing in the driveway to rob him. And so the address they have even is no good because the people that live there know nothing about it.
So at what point, hopefully at some point, even though, jobs are hard to come by, especially entry-level jobs like this, but at some point maybe Domino's will start having problems finding drivers. Maybe instead of having delivery, we'll go pick up a pizza from someplace that's a mom and pop joint that allows their employees not to be victims. At some point, we got to kind of make a stand against these companies that have this type of policy.
That are disarming victims.
Yes.
You see nothing in the press about some pizza delivery guy going on a rampage and killing 30 people. They're carried purely for defense, and they'd rather have their guy dead than,
Yeah, I think
I have a relative who's a pizza delivery guy and a youngster, and this just drives me crazy.
Absolutely.
It just absolutely drives me crazy.
And there's a good lawsuit here. If you have a legal concealed carry permit, you go to your boss and say, I have this and I'd like to carry it while I deliver pizzas, and he says no, and then something happens to you.
Got a case?
I would love that case.
Well, I'm going to find you that case, Clark. You can send us an email if you have any questions or comments. It needs to go to bob@firedupmail.com. Because of the short hour we're doing now and the time delays that work between the video you're watching and listening to the show on stream at KXNT, KGWN. Wow, why did I say that? Too late to cut that out. I used to be at a different station. Now I'm on KDON. Because of the time delay, we can't take live questions on the air because we're 20 seconds ahead of what you're listening to when you're listening to the feed from KDWN. So, but if you have a question or comment, you can send it to me as a text or an email to bob@firedupmail.com. We'll check that when the news break is on at the half hour, and if there's something appropriate, we'll answer it on the air. Otherwise, everybody that writes in with a question or comment will be answered. If you have a question for one of our attorneys, please feel free. Just send it to bob@firedupmail.com, and we will get the answer back out to you. If you do that, be sure and tell us where you are sending your email from. This show goes worldwide, and to answer your question properly, we need to know whether you're calling from Romania or Hawaii or California or any other foreign country like that. We do here at the gun store offer free concealed carry permit firearms classes. If you want to get a carry permit, we have the class here every Monday and every Wednesday and every Saturday. It's free. We only charge you for the qualification ammunition, which is between $15 and $25, depending on the caliber of your gun. So you can call in or go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and you'll find a place there to sign up for classes, and we'll take care of it. And it takes right now about 90 days to get your permit after you qualify and turn the app into the police department. Obviously, you have to be a good citizen and no serious criminal history, or you don't get a permit. So don't discover that halfway through class and say, by the way, I'm a 3-time felon, because you're wasting your time and ours. But if you're legal to get a permit, no criminal history to speak of, you can get a permit. There's a little story here just before we hit the news that just is dear to my heart. It's not really well, it is a gun crime the way they did it, but this is from the Orlando Sentinel on the 20th of this month. This is a 23-year-old guy who shot himself during a gun safety class at a pawn shop. The incident happened at the Instant Replay Pawn Shop and Shooting Range on Colonial Drive, according to a lieutenant with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. They run classes there like we run classes here, and we do encourage everyone not to bring live ammunition into the classroom, and if we catch you doing that, you'll be on the sidewalk going to find another class to teach you. One of our instructors is sitting here on set glaring at me at the moment over that issue. And we have had some cases of that, but his gun went off accidentally and grazed his leg. The injuries are non-life threatening. A family member took him to the hospital. The incident remains under investigation with the police department, according to the lieutenant. Why is it we don't allow live ammunition in our classroom?
Yeah, because I was sure the gun was unloaded.
And they do that. You know, if you're in a concealed weapon class, you want to demonstrate that you are safe with a firearm. You're learning how to be safe with a firearm. And if the first thing you do is violate a rule that the instructor has set up for the safety of everyone in the class. It's fortunate this guy only shot himself, grazed his leg. We just really can't have that. And years ago, we were teaching a class. I was personally teaching a class in firearm safety for security officers, and we have the same rule: no loaded ammunition, no loaded guns in the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't search everybody. We just say, you know, if you got your gun loaded, put the ammunition with the grill out front or the magazines or whatever, and leave your gun with the slide lock back and so on. And we had a student that in the middle of class, he realized that we were real serious about that, and he had a loaded gun in his carry bag that was sitting at his feet. So on a break, when everybody left the room except a couple of people, he decided he would unload his gun. Follow the sequence here. He took the loaded gun out of the briefcase. He pulled the slide back and to eject the round that was in the chamber, and then the slide, of course, went back forward. Then he removed the magazine. Anybody listening out there who owns an automatic understands what happened. Then, of course, not wanting to leave the gun cocked, he pointed it safely at the wall and pulled the trigger to get the striker down, the hammer down. There was a very loud noise. The bullet ricocheted off the concrete wall we had in that room at the time, and another student was sitting in class in the room, starting to eat his lunch. And when I measured everything and where the bullet hit the opposite wall, and then ricocheted and hit the near wall. We discovered, if I can demonstrate with you, Clark, that where he was sitting, the bullet passed over this guy's head about that high, just about an inch over another student's head, and cracked into the wall. That student was really upset. There are reasons we have rules, particularly in training classes, about not having loaded firearms, et cetera, et cetera. If you come into one of our classes and you are an active duty police officer, we will generally not disarm you. We will simply tell you your gun remains holstered no matter what. Don't show it to anybody, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know where a concealed weapon class ever been robbed anyway, but it could happen soon. We're making it a gun-free zone. The instructors are usually out, but in any case,
I think we've done stories about
follow
gun
the
stores
rules.
being robbed.
Well, not the class. It's
Not the class, just the gun store, yeah.
you don't want to rob a police training class. That's really a bad idea. It's like robbing a cop bar. Things happen, but there are safety rules where you go here and there that you may not understand the reasoning why, and you're looking at why would they make it? Well, I'm safe with a gun. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, and so on and so on. And people do that still. Get involved in that sort of thing. I'm going to skip forward. I think I've got another similar case in here that I was going to bring up, and we've got just about enough time before the break, where the guy did get in trouble. Yeah, we're on page 5. This is from the 6th of this month. Similar circumstance. This is Pennsylvania. A man responsible for a negligent discharge in a church during Easter Mass 2 months ago has been charged by the police, according to Associated Press. This guy, he's 20 years old, from Altoona, Pennsylvania. He's been charged in Blair County with recklessly endangering another person, disorderly conduct, and discharging a firearm within the city limits. What's going on here is he's in church. He's carrying his firearm in a pocket without a holster, just carrying it loosely. The safeties weren't on. Whatever type of gun, they didn't say. It has 4 safeties, the article said, that weren't on. That's probably incorrect, but anyway. There was a bullet in the chamber, according to the press. We call that a cartridge in this industry. There wasn't a bullet, there was a cartridge in the chamber. It passed a drop test when the police tried to set it off by dropping the gun and so on and so on. So they have determined through their test that the guy was playing with the gun in his pocket, and he fired it. He hit himself in the leg. Again, he didn't hurt anybody else. But the interesting thing is here now, the police are actually charging the guy with a gross misdemeanor for discharging his firearm where people could be injured. Carry your gun in a holster. If you're carrying it in your pocket, carry it in a holster so you can't accidentally trip the trigger. And if you're so bored in Easter service at church that you've got to be playing with your gun in your pocket, you probably need to go to a more hip church that has more singing and dancing and whatever around, so you don't play with your gun in your pocket and shoot yourself on Easter morning. Please. Just going to announce here that you haven't heard, the gun store is lead-free. We are a lead-free range. Lead has been causing problems for decades in paint and things like that. One of the things they're saying about the kid that was killed in the police van in Baltimore was that he had lost his mental ability because of paint that was in his house where he was raised. I don't know about that, but that's why he was acting so goofy with the police and so forth, was he had a little diminished capacity caused by lead paint. Lead is a poison, and it does cause mental retardation and so forth in children. We have gone entirely lead-free here at the gun store, so we don't poison our children that come in to shoot. Children can safely shoot here. There's still problems with sound with pregnant women and so forth, but we are lead-free, and we're a lot safer to use. If you're concerned about lead poisoning, this is one place you can come and shoot your gun. Got any lead diminished capacity cases? There,
A few lead poisoning cases, but not
It-
diminished capacity.
it does happen, and lead is a poison, and it needs to be, you need to be in an area, you have to understand when a gun fires, lead is burned off the back of the bullet, it vaporizes. And to know whether you're being exposed to lead vapor from gunshots, look at the smoke. If you see gray smoke in front of the gun you're shooting, and it isn't a black powder gun, because black powder does make smoke, the propellant in modern ammunition is smokeless powder. It isn't truly smokeless, but the smoke is not visible. It's clear colored smoke. You will only see a little wavy lines, but you won't see any color in that smoke. If you see gray color in front of your gun, what you're having happen is lead is burning off the back of the bullet and vaporizing. It's in the size of 2 microns, 2 millionths of an inch. That is so small that if you drop it in ambient air, it takes up to 24 hours for it to hit the ground, the little particles. So that's why they need to wear respirators and things when they work around lead and lead solder and all that sort of thing. Anyway, the short version is we don't have that here at the gun store. So please feel free that you can come in here safely and shoot. We should be up on the news break as far as I can tell, but I'm not hearing anything from the engineer. We're broadcasting locally at the gun store. The engineer is in the studio at KDWN. And, pardon me?
We just went into news.
Okay. We'll be back right after the news. Don't go away.
Before you get too far away from the comment,
are back here on Fired Up. My guest is Attorney Clark Patrick, a murder defense specialist. I am your host for the show, Bob Irwin, and we are coming to you from the gun store live. We have somebody in studio who's listening, watching the show on YouTube, and it's coming over loud and clear, apparently. So that's good. We are now, you can watch the show, listen to the show on YouTube under the Fired Up with Bob Irwin. If you search Fired Up with Bob Irwin on YouTube, and you will get it on your iPad, on your computer, on your whatever you want. It comes on, and you will see the show in its entirety, and a little bit maybe before and after as we set up, because we turn the cameras on and try to be dressed and ready to go when we get the word from radio station. So we are here again. I want to do one more shooting case before we talk about the political stuff. Simply, well, this is self-explanatory. This is a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reporting on the 26th in Homewood, Pennsylvania. A man was found guilty of third-degree murder in a shooting at his home. The Allegheny County jury found this 26-year-old guy guilty of third-degrry murder. Not something we have here.
We don't have third-degree murder.
Kind of like voluntary
manslaughter.
Yeah. That's a term they use. The assistant DA asked the jury to find the shooter guilty of first-degree murder of a 35-year-old man, but they did not. They found him guilty of third-degree murder. This is the story. This 35-year-old man is the ex-boyfriend of a woman now living with a 26-year-old new boyfriend, and they are engaged to be married. So we have a 26-year-old guy living in the house with this woman who used to be their boyfriend and girlfriend, and this guy shows up last October demanding to see his daughter. He is the father of the woman's child. He came apparently unannounced, and I'm sorry, this guy is 45 years old, not 35. The 26-year-old resident, the male, ended up shooting this 45-year-old guy during an argument on the porch. Now, he's coming over to see his child, but unannounced. And obviously, this is the old fiance. Now, the new fiance doesn't like him really well and so forth. So there's a little blood between them. A neighbor who was in the home testified that what happened was the two were arguing. The 45-year-old said, I have a right to see my daughter. The youngster saying, this is my house. You didn't call us. You know, I don't like you. Go away. The woman is standing in between them when the 25-year-old resident of the house reached over her and shot I said it wrong again, shot the 35-year-old man in the upper chest. Then he fell down the porch steps. The defense attorney asked the jury to find the 26-year-old shooter not guilty based on self-defense. He said his client feared for his family's safety when the 35-year-old came into the house. The bullet had a slight downward trajectory. So in his closing argument, the defense lawyer said that the prosecutor was arguing that the shot must have been fired from the porch at a downward angle because the victim was walking down the steps, hence the track of the bullet. The defense attorney argued that the downward trajectory in the guy's chest was caused by the fact that he was leaning forward trying to break into the house at the time. So we've established, you always look for things that they all agree with. Right. They all agree the guy came over to see his daughter. They all agreed there was a shouting match. The couple in the house is saying that this took place on the porch, but the guy was trying to force his way through the door with the woman in the middle, leaning in, hence the trajectory of the bullet is a slight downward angle. The prosecutor is saying, no, the guy was on the steps trying to back away. Hence, that's why, because the guy was firing downhill, that's why the bullet's at a downward angle. It's interesting when you look at gunshot wounds, we all start to presume that the guy's standing upright facing forward when the bullet goes through. That's not true, of course. Gunfights and fights are very dynamic. People at all kinds of different angles and so forth. Anyway, the two in the house testified the 35-year-old threatened to kill them. I think that was not believable. The jury actually deliberated 3 hours before finding the guy guilty. The maximum penalty on this third degree is 40 years. Sentencing is set for September 24 of this month. This is a little bit different, obviously, Clark, because that's a long sentence.
That's a
for
long
voluntary
sentence.
manslaughter.
Sure. Yeah, voluntary
They
manslaughter.
may have
is
something
only-
else in between there that
Right.
we're not familiar with, but clearly the guy made verbal threats. He was coming into the house, wanted to come in the house to see his daughter, but verbal threats on their own, even if he actually said, I'm going to kill you if you don't let me in the house, isn't enough to justify using the firearm.
No, deadly
Um,
force. Words are never enough to justify deadly force.
And I've got to believe that when the jury went that quick, 3 hours, that they didn't believe the couple at all, their version that he threatened to kill him.
No. They believed him a little bit because it did take him 3 hours. And, you know, I always say every half hour the jury's deliberating is a victory.
But they're obviously going to hammer him and hammer the shooter. And if there isn't a reason to use deadly force, you really don't like the guy, you're really mad at him, doesn't work. And attorneys that question witnesses on the stand are experts at getting witnesses to tell the truth. If they're lying, to get them to look like liars on the stand. That's the training.
That's
right?
the training.
And
That's right.
any of you out there who think you can do something grossly wrong, lie about it, and succeed in standing up on the stand without them breaking you to getting you to tell the truth or to look like a bald-faced liar, it's really tough. I've seen some serious experts in lying get taken apart on the stand, and it's you tell the truth. And had this couple, I believe, told the truth about the incident, you know, the guy'd go to jail, but now they've really made this more complicated by lying about what happened and so forth and so on. I think both attorneys are a little exaggerating in their thing with the angle of the bullet, because they're both making the presumption that the guy was standing this way or that way when the bullet went through, and that doesn't happen in real life. One of the cases I worked years and years ago, a guy got shot in the back of the head, and the bullet entered low in his skull and exited through the top of his head. He was, they said, part of the prosecution, he was obviously diving out of the way when he was fired, and the guy fired the gun. Because otherwise, how could the bullet go through his head like that? It was outdoors, so there was no third print of the bullet to see where it went. Turned out it wasn't the case at all. It was an actually accidental discharge. He was in the house. The other guy asked him to leave the house. He's got a gun in his hand, and the guy turned his back and he pushed him in the back as he's going out the front door. And we discovered that by looking at the cadaver, and he had a burn mark from the revolver cylinder in the center of his back, and then the bullet track from here forward. The gun was flat against his back when it went off, indicating what the shooter said: I was pushing him, and the gun went off. It's still obviously a crime because you know, in danger and all, but it wasn't this. He's running away, ducking, and you fired at him from 10 feet away. Not the case. Don't assume the body is this way or that way when you go to look at these things. And from the previous story, with all the explanations of different media, don't assume what you read in the paper is the whole story. These are
It rarely is.
fairly complicated. Have you ever had a murder case that didn't fill up at least 2 banker boxes full of
At least 2
stuff,
buffer boxes.
and
yes.
you get 2 paragraphs
Right.
in the news media, and they see it from their own point of view. Legal stuff. U.S. Supreme Court. MSN reported the U.S. Supreme Court turned away a National Rifle Association challenge to a San Francisco law that requires people who store handguns at home to put them in a lockbox or disable them with a trigger lock. There were 2 dissenting opinions that the judges left intact the Federal Appeals Court decision that said the 2007 law was a reasonable step that fostered gun safety without impeding constitutional rights. That was Thomas and Scalia, but the rest of them upheld the law. This was filed by 6 San Francisco residents and the NRA and a few others. San Francisco passed a law in 2007, requires people, if you're storing your handgun in your house, you have a handgun in your house, at home, you either have to have it in a lockbox or disable them with a trigger lock unless the gun is carried on your person. If it's on your person, it can be in a holster or carried in your hand, ready to fire. But if it's not on your person, it must be stored in something with a gun lock. So if somebody comes crashing through your front door, you can't get the gun because it's in a lockbox in the other room. You can't carry it around with you. So how do you protect yourself when you're asleep and somebody crashes into your house? You find your lockbox and a combination, and you're not allowed to have a loose gun in your house. It's a child safety thing, but it applies to everybody and all firearms. So all firearms in storage in San Francisco, if they're not in your hand or on your body in a holster, have to be unloaded and locked in a box. They rejected the appeal, the Supreme Court did, saying what San Francisco did is reasonable, and it copies the Washington, D.C. law on handguns, but it really doesn't. The Washington, D.C. law that was overturned said you couldn't have a gun, period, in your house, and you had to lock up handguns, long guns, anything. San Francisco's law is a little bit different, but it requires, if you live in San Francisco and you want to have a gun at the ready, you have to go to sleep in your shoulder holster, because otherwise it has to be in a lockbox. And
makes no sense.
anybody who has looked at home invasions and hot burglaries and whatever you call them, they crash through your door and they're standing on top of your bed like in 3 seconds. By the time you wake up, they're already there.
Right.
You haven't got time to be playing with the lockbox. So you don't really have to call Uber or Domino's Pizza. You can go to San Francisco and kick somebody's door in, because unless they're awake, they were not allowed to have a gun. And if they shoot you, you can sue them for having a gun
That was not in the
that was
lockbox.
not in the lockbox, and they're violating
There you
San
go.
Francisco law.
So all the criminals should go to San Francisco. It sounds like it's a very friendly place for them.
It is a friendly place. You can't have magazines. They
Right.
outlawed magazines hold more than 10 shots in San Francisco. When they outlawed those in San Francisco, they made it that you can't possess those in of themselves. I mean,
Let
even
alone
if you don't have a gun,
Yeah.
you just the magazine itself is contraband. More good news. A magazine I get occasionally called The Week carried a story that the Boy Scouts of America have now banned water gun fights, saying it is not kind for scouts to shoot each other with simulated firearms. The organization's new national shooting manual also forbids the use of potato guns and marshmallow shooters.
Wow.
So I guess scouting will be a lot. They still do riflery and shoot
Right.
real guns, but they can't use any pretend guns that shoot water or marshmallows or anything, because that's kind of
Wonder what would happen if one of them
aggressive.
ate their Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun at breakfast.
I suppose I suppose that's covered. If you, a couple of good stories. In Wisconsin this week, Governor Scott Walker signed into new law repealing the state's 48-hour waiting period to buy a handgun. They had a statewide law that if you buy a handgun, you have to wait 48 hours from the time you buy it till the time you can pick it up. We had that here too with a 3-day wait. He said the waiting period is unnecessary given federal background checks now in place. The second new law, get this, allows off-duty and retired law enforcement officers to carry their firearm on school campuses. Good. Both laws became effective yesterday. They didn't really get campus carry, but they're not disarming cops now who go on to campus. Which
well, it's a start.
It's a start, yeah. It's good. Nevada, as most of you will know if you're local here, our legislature did not pass the campus carry initiative. Even for cops, the only people carrying guns on higher education campuses are those with special permission from the president of the particular campus, which we understand in the last 5 years there have been 3 of those allowed. The number at UNLV was 0, I believe, but there were a couple of them up north. So we don't have campus carry even for cops. So if you're a cop and you're going to UNLV, you can't carry your gun. Otherwise, the campus police will shoot you because anybody they see with a gun gets shot at, according to their about to retire chief. He testified at a hearing I was at a couple of years ago on campus carry, and he said that his officers, if they see somebody with a gun that is not wearing a police uniform, they shoot first and ask questions later. Jose Enrique said that. That's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard a law enforcement officer say in my life, is guys are not trained to say, police drop the gun or ask questions. He said they shoot first, ask questions later. I hope they really don't, and I don't think they really do that. I think he was exaggerating, but anyway. He's retiring, and there'll be a new guy there. Not because of this, he's retiring. National Shooting Sports reported yesterday, 26, that suppressors for hunting in Maine will become legal later this year. Their Bill 942 went into law yesterday without the signature of their governor. The law takes effect 90 days after the Maine legislature adjourns. Maine will become the 37th state to legalize the use of firearm suppressors for hunting. So they're becoming more and more in use. In Vermont, Governor Pete Shumlin signed the Fish and Wildlife Bill last week, included language to legalize suppressors and repeal one of the oldest bans in the nation. Vermont had a law prohibiting silencers or suppressors that predated the National Firearms Act, the 1934 law that made you register machine guns and so on. They've been anti-silencer forever and ever, and the legislation was signed June 17th. The language in the measure strikes the long-time ban on manufacture, sale, possession of silencers and replaces it with language which will allow it as long as you conform with federal law. So previously, while federal law allows you to buy a silencer, the state of Vermont did not. If you lived in Vermont, you couldn't buy one. And now you can, as long as you comply with federal law. It was interesting watching this story, the way it came out in the media, and I pulled a couple of Vermont papers immediately, as you know, you can on the internet, and I found one of them that carried the story that simply said silencers are now legal in Vermont. It didn't say anything about the federal still regulate them. So I imagine that caused some dealers to try and explain to a lot of people when they came in, I want my silencer. And
you know, the silencers in hunting, there's a lot of places in Europe that it's required to hunt with a silencer.
Yeah.
There's there's requirements that motorcycles have mufflers and cars have mufflers, but your gun, it's illegal unless you have the federal firearm stamp to put a muffler on your gun. So now with 37 states allowing
37
suppressors
states
for
now
hunting.
allow them for hunting, and
Maybe it's time for
41
the-
states actually allow silencers altogether.
Yeah, maybe it's
So
time for
almost
everybody to
everybody.
write their congressman and tell them to tell the ATF it's time to rethink this, and that maybe the tax stamp is not needed for a suppressor, just a regular background check should be sufficient.
One would think so, and the only reason we end up with all these regs on silencers is because ATF determined some years ago in their purview that a suppressor or silencer for a firearm is in itself a firearm. So that is regulated not as an accessory to a firearm like a muzzle brake or
Right.
something. It's considered to be the firearm. So
So
even
if you
though it
put a
doesn't
bullet
shoot
in the
anything.
suppressor unattached to a gun, it'll shoot.
No, but you know, that's the government. I mean,
Right.
I don't know how they arrived at that so they could regulate them, but that's why it's viewed. So when you get some paperwork to buy a suppressor, you don't have to have a gun. It's unrelated. So when you have a suppressor that is built into a pistol, that is a semi-automatic pistol, you register the suppressor, but the pistol itself is not registered even though the suppressor is built into it.
Right.
It's kind of married to it on the paper. But if you have a machine gun and then you put a suppressor on it, you have two tax stamps, one for the gun and one for the suppressor, or a short barrel rifle, or whatever. Yeah. So that's probably the most common question we get when people come in the store and they look at the suppressors we have for sale. We sell suppressors. You can buy them here in Nevada. There's a $200 tax stamp, and it takes
9 months.
Yeah.
It's like having a baby.
Faster if you know a congressman or somebody that can call.
Really?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that when I needed that
It's like,
information?
I
Bob?
wanted to find out for the show how long it took. I didn't want to tell everybody you bought a suppressor, but you know, that's okay. You know, now.
And I bet that would have worked for the short barrel rifle one I'm waiting on right now.
Well, you know, the problem is that it depends on who you can call, and our congressmen are pretty new. Obviously, calling Harry Reid isn't going to help. He's not going to make an exception for you and call up and say, you know, could you speed this along? On the East Coast, that's fairly common, unfortunately, that things get moved through ATF faster than others would. Want to remind everybody, we're starting to wind down here. We have discontinued the show that was on Pursuit Network, and it is being replaced gradually by this one as we get more and more stuff to put on the air. So this show will appear throughout the internet, on your iPad, on your cell phone, on all this stuff. If you go to YouTube, you will find us under Fired Up with Bob Irwin on YouTube, on all of those devices. The shows are now also being contained on our website, and they will show shortly after they're on the air on our website. They're showing on YouTube at the moment. Next Saturday, we'll be on again from 6 to 7 p.m. The guest attorney will be Michael Giles, the criminal defense attorney here in Las Vegas. If you need to get a hold of Fired Up for other reasons, office reasons, you can call us at 702-333-0033. That is our office phone number. It's not on while we're on the air because we're locking that line off so we don't get calls. But if you want to find out if one of the guests can be a guest speaker at your convention or ask a question, those are better directed to Fired Up Mail, to bob@firedupmail.com. Right after us, the Dennis Bono Show is on the air. I always give Lorraine Hunt's business a little plug. Comes from the Bootlegger Restaurant. Lorraine, the owner, is the ex-lieutenant governor of Nevada and a strong supporter of gun rights, among other things. So I suggest you go to the Bootlegger for dinner. That's not because she's paying me to say that, just because I said that. And I'm gonna have a commercial. There's a commercial from the gun store. This is a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, brand new. They're made in Las Vegas by Jimenez Firearms. We carry these in the store in black and shiny and dull gray like this one. They cost $224. If you mentioned you saw this on this show, we'll give you $24 off. You can buy it for $200 plus sales tax if you mention the show when you come in to see one. If you cannot afford to have a gun at home, this is when you can afford. We'll show you how to shoot it and even put you in a free safety class if you need to learn how to use it. We are out of time, I believe, if the clock I'm looking at is running correctly. Thank you all for listening to Fired Up. We will be back next week. Thanks for listening.
I see me. And Bob. And Bab.
On this?
On this, I see a blank screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if we do this, that's no.
Yeah.
Mm.